5 spine-chilling true stories of terrifying nights alone, unexplained horror revealed. Lisa had always believed in the safety of her quiet suburban neighborhood in Indiana, but every night as she returned home from her late shifts, she felt the weight of tension suffocating her. The crickets chirped their eerie serenade, while the streetlights flickered like they were warning her of something lurking in the shadows. Tonight, however, her heart raced as she noticed her son Jamie's toys scattered in strange places. The fire truck under her bed, the dinosaur in the kitchen. She shuddered, a chill crawling up her spine. It felt wrong, like a violation of the tiny world she worked so hard to create. As days turned into restless nights, a whisper began to ripple through her home. It started soft, almost dreamy, but soon morphed into a chilling echo that rattled her very core. The sound crept through the hallways, a sinister lullaby latching on to her subconscious. Lisa tried to dismiss it, thought it was just her nerves, but the whispering only grew louder, hanging over her like a storm cloud waiting to release its terrifying rain. Every creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps trailing behind her, sending ice through her veins. Her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, once so warm and friendly, had turned into a ghost of her former self. Now she watched Lisa with narrow eyes, like she carried the weight of a dark secret. Lisa could feel the whispers from the neighbors, casting furtive glances and muttering about a child who had gone missing months ago. The name felt like a knife slicing through her gut as it twisted deeper into memory. Lisa could hardly breathe as paranoia began to claw at her. The neighborhood she'd loved felt corrupted, and every innocent smile seemed twisted. One unusually dark evening, after a grueling shift, she stumbled home to a nightmarish scene. Jamie was missing. Panic closed in around her like a vice, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "Jamie," she called, voice trembling with fear. Every shadow in her home felt suffocatingly alive as she searched every room. His laughter had faded, and only silence remained, twisting her stomach into knots. Hiding? In denial, she tossed aside blankets and flung open closets, heart racing, until she caught sight of Mrs. Thompson peering from her window. The old school at the end of the street swung into Mrs. Thompson's thoughts like a pendulum. "They say the spirits of lost children linger in its halls," she murmured, confusion knitting Lisa's brows together. A rush of memories washed over her. A child vanished. The place had been abandoned for years, its broken windows collecting dust and secrets. How could she not have known? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow.
If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With her heart slamming against her ribcage, Lisa dashed toward the graveyard of the school. Each step felt heavy, soaked in dread. As she approached, the shadows grew thicker, twisting unnaturally. The storefronts blinked like the last breath of fading light, the cool air thick with undeniable fear. And then she heard it, Jamie's voice, a beacon in the night. "Mommy, I'm hiding, come find me." In that instant, terror flooded her senses. What if her innocent boy was caught in something far darker than a simple game? The call was both alluring and ominous, echoing through the dark air, piercing her mind with a haunting dread. Lisa took a deep breath. The sweet scent of childhood innocence mingled with the heavy atmosphere of foreboding. Could it be? The unknown was wrapping around her, tempting her into the shadows. She had to decide, leave him be or confront the horror lurking just beyond the safety of her home. The chilling thought settled like stone in her stomach. In this town, not all games end in laughter. The whispers intensified, curling around Lisa's thoughts like dark tendrils, urging her forward. With every shaky step, she felt as if unseen eyes were piercing through her skin, judging her, taunting her. Jamie's voice repeated, "Mommy, I'm hiding," but now it seemed farther away, echoing from the very depths of the crumbling school. Dread tightened in her chest. She fought to suppress a scream as her mind raced with possible horrors. What could be waiting for her in that suffocating darkness? Yet the pull of her son was stronger. She continued, her footsteps crunching over the gravel,
rasping against the silence that surrounded the old school building. The structure loomed ahead, a decaying shell of its former glory, windows shattered like broken promises. Rusted gates screeched open as she entered the overgrown courtyard, weeds thriving where laughter once rang out. Dust hung heavy in the air, swirling softly in the moonlight. She desperately scanned the surroundings, but all she found were shadows dancing in the corners of her vision. "Jamie," she called again, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Panic swelled, her heart thundering in her ears. The air turned colder, a biting chill that wrapped around her like ice chains. A flicker at the corner of her eye caught her attention, and she turned sharply, a flicker of movement among the darkened windows. Steeling herself, she ventured closer. The moment she stepped through the doorway, the air shifted, a thick blanket of silence smothering her. Inside, the hall was dark, the walls lined with peeling paint and discolored tiles.
Graffiti scrawled with hasty strokes marred the remnants of innocence. She felt an overwhelming urge to turn back, but she couldn't leave without Jamie. Then it happened. A soft giggle echoed from deeper within the building, a sound that felt both familiar and alien, taunting her to follow. "Mommy!" The call was now a whisper, hauntingly close. "I'm hiding." Both comforting and sinister, it beckoned her further into the murky depths. Lisa's breaths became shallow as her mind raced. She was losing precious time. If Jamie was truly here, she had to find him. She picked her way through the debris scattered across the floor. Old desks, disintegrating books, memories of laughter long gone. Each creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning, a countdown of dread. Just as she rounded a corner, a flicker of movement made her freeze. Shadows elongated, lunging toward her as if they were alive. Her heart pounded, fear wrapping around her throat. What was she doing here? This wasn't right. But then she recalled Jamie's innocence, his laughter. She couldn't let fear win. "Jamie, where are you?" she bellowed, desperation bleeding into her voice. "Mommy!" The voice was unsettlingly joyful now, echoing joyfully back at her, but it felt layered with something deeper, something dark and twisted. Suddenly something shifted in her peripheral vision. Lisa turned, only to find the hallway empty, swallowed whole by darkness. "Jamie!" she screamed, panic rising as shadows danced wickedly around her. But deep within the shadows, there was a shape. Her pulse raced as she stepped closer. A figure, small and pale, stood hunched in one of the far corners, just beyond her sight. "Come play with us," it whispered, words dripping with malice. A gasp escaped her lips as the room began to thrum with energy, a vibration of dread focused on her growing fear. What had she unleashed? With a mixture of horror and determination, Lisa staggered backward, ready to flee until she looked back at the figure again, her heart pounding a frantic tempo of dread. The child's face came into view, and her stomach dropped in recognition. But then darkness enveloped her vision entirely. The last thing she heard was a cacophony of whispers, each sound choking and unbearable. Were they children? Were they lost souls? Or something worse? Paralyzed with fear, Lisa could only scream as the shadows closed in around her. In that desperate moment, she realized, finding Jamie might mean losing everything. What would she sacrifice to save her child? And up ahead, somewhere shrouded in darkness, the laughter continued. Now she had to make a choice. Would she brave the shadows to save her son, or succumb to the darkness herself? Lisa's scream faded into an eerie silence as a relentless darkness swallowed her whole. Panic surged like icy claws around her heart. Where was she? The sensation of time, stretching painfully, threatened to unravel her mental grip. Eyes wide, she strained to see through the smothering blackness. "Jamie!" Desperation laced her voice, but the shadows answered only with mocking silence. She reached out desperately, her fingers brushing against a cold wall that scraped her skin. She took a breath, trembling, trying to drown out the whispers that beckoned from the dim corners of her mind. "You have to be brave. Find him." As if in response, she felt a sudden rush of wind, chilling her to the bone. The synthetic laughter echoed again, now distorted and menacing, reverberating off the walls. "Mommy, come play." A wave of sickness washed over her. Lisa shook her head, her heartbeat pounding in her ears like a war drum. She forced her limbs to move, stepping cautiously over something soft and unidentifiable. "No, no, no, this isn't happening," she murmured, half to herself, half to whatever malevolent force toyed with her sanity. Suddenly, a shadow glided across the far wall, a fleeting glimpse, almost too quick to register. Her breath hitched. Had that been Jamie? Or something much worse?
She bolted in pursuit, adrenaline coursing through her veins. With each step deeper into the school, the walls throbbed as if they possessed a heartbeat, pulsing with a malevolence that made her skin crawl. The shattered fragments of past students' lives creaked underfoot, each sound taunting her with memories of what had long been lost. A door swung open in front of her with a creak like a funeral dirge. Lisa hesitated, her intuition screaming to turn back. But she had come too far. Jamie's voice threaded through the oppressive air. "Mommy, come play." Fear fought against her overwhelming love for her son. Inside, the room was an altar of forgotten horrors. Papers rustled like skeletal hands, chaotic montages of lost lives scattered in the dim light. And in the center stood a solitary figure, tiny, wringing its hands, shrouded in dim shadows. It turned slowly, tiny face illuminated by a sliver of moonlight. "Jamie," the word caught in Lisa's throat, a plea against the tide of uncertainty. "Mommy, you found me." The child grinned, but it was a smile that seemed to stretch too wide. The eyes were too dark, reflecting nothing but an endless abyss. "Wait, no," she gasped, stepping back in horror. "You're not him." As the reality of the figure seeped into her consciousness, the air thickened, choking her breath. The specter giggled, spinning on its small feet, shadows swirling around, whispering her secrets back at her. "You belong to us, Mommy, forever." The weight of countless souls pressed against her, invisible hands reaching, clawing, and gripping. Lisa felt the edges of her mind unraveling, fragments of memories slipping away into the void. No, this wasn't her son. This was a trap, an insidious darkness trying to ensnare her. Lisa turned, ready to flee, but the door slammed shut, sealing her inside with the spiraling shadows.
She pounded against the wood, panic igniting a fire in her chest. "Let me out!" The shadows around her thickened, almost alive now, coiling around like serpents. "Stay with us," they hissed. "The darkness is safe." Just as despair threatened to consume her, she tugged on her fading memories of Jamie's laughter. A moment of clarity pierced through the overwhelming dread. She stepped back, her breaths unsteady but resolute. "I will find my son," she shouted, each word a lifeline tugging her back from the brink. And in that moment of defiance, the room trembled. The shadows recoiled as if stung. The creature's laughter turned into a screech as the chaos erupted around her. But now, with the door before her just slightly ajar, Lisa knew she had to decide one final time. Would she confront the darkness inside, or break free and seek the fading light of her child? As the shadows writhed with fury, a flicker of hope caught her eye. She had to act. With the laughter of the lost children echoing in her ears and her heart racing, she lunged for the space between the door, hoping against all odds that freedom awaited her on the other side. But what would be waiting in the light? And would she escape with her sanity intact? The door creaked open, the dark room releasing a rush of cold air like a breath held too long. Lisa tumbled out into the narrow hallway, but the shadows swirled around her, trying to pull her back into their embrace. She clutched the doorframe, her fingers cold and shaking, and took a ragged breath. "Not again," she whispered fiercely, fueling her resolve. The hallway stretched out ahead, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed ominously. It felt like a maze, a labyrinth of fear and memories. She had to make the right choice. There was no room for mistakes. But as she hesitated, fragments of whispers drifted through the air, taunting her resolve. "Choices, choices," they echoed, merging into a cacophony that clouded her thoughts. "Jamie," she called again, her voice cracking, desperation bleeding into the echoing silence. Could he be nearby? The thought of her baby boy alone in this forsaken place pushed her forward. The walls seemed to close in on her, seeming to pulse with every frantic heartbeat. Someone, something, was watching from the shadows, lurking just out of reach. She could almost feel its breath on her neck, cold and suffocating. She stumbled into a classroom, the familiar chaos of her son's toys and drawings littered on the floor, now molded by time and neglect. But the floorboards creaked, transforming the innocent remnants into something sinister. Lisa's chest tightened as she scanned the room, every shadow a reminder of what was lost. "Where are you, Jamie?" Sweat pooled at her temples. As she moved carefully among the items, she saw something move in her peripheral view, a flash of white darting behind the teacher's desk. Lisa's heart leapt. "Jamie!" She rushed forward, heart pounding. The moment stretched into eternity. All the joys of motherhood filled her mind, memories of laughter and warmth. but she stopped dead in her tracks as she rounded the desk. Instead of her son, she found a doll, its unblinking eyes staring up at her, cracked porcelain glistening beneath the dim light. The doll's mouth was pulled into a grotesque smile, teeth too sharp, too wide, resembling the smile of the shadow creature from before. "Come play," it whispered, an echo of Jamie's voice intertwined with an unsettling undertone. Lisa recoiled, the hairs on her neck prickling. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Panic rooted her feet. The whispering grew louder, swirling around her like an angry tornado. "Stay, stay, with us." In a flash, she remembered another child's laughter, one that had filled the darkness with joy, not dread. "I'm coming for you, Jamie," she shouted defiantly, pressing through the paralysis gripping her body. She stepped towards the door, desperate to escape the choking whispers that seemed to tear at her sanity. Just as her fingers found the cold handle, it jerked back, the shadows pushing against the wood like a living thing. "Do you really think you can leave?" The voice was thick, slippery, smooth as oil. Lisa turned, terror freezing her veins. The dark figure was back, shadowy tendrils wrapping around its form, looming larger than before. This entity was feeding off her fear. "You belong to the darkness, just like all the others." Lisa's breath quickened, mind racing. She had to focus. The flicker of her son's laughter, the way he looked up at her, eyes full of trust. "No, you don't control me," she yelled, surprising herself with the strength of her fury. In that moment of defiance, the air around her exploded with light, a bitter, shrill contrast to the enveloping shadows. It felt like tipping the balance. The shadows recoiled, leaving a path open. Lisa sprinted, heart hammering, adrenaline surging through her tired limbs. The exit loomed ahead, beckoning like a siren's call. But as she approached, the last of the whispers fused into a singular voice, low and menacing. "You're not ready. You'll come back. They always do." Lisa halted, the doorway now looming like a chasm. Would freedom really welcome her, or was it another trap? She paused, caught between two worlds, the shadows calling her back and the siren of the light promising safety. Time slowed as she took a deep breath and steeled herself. What awaited her on the other side, and was there any chance she could truly escape the darkness? The shadows seemed to thicken, a brooding curtain stretching out before her, blocking the light from the hallway. With every second, the oppressive weight in the air grew heavier, suffocating her will.
Lisa's heart raced, pounding loudly against her chest as the ominous voice slithered through her thoughts, echoing, "You'll come back. They always do." "Not me," she uttered, clenching her fists. The door was inches away, yet it felt like a mile. Doubt gnawed at her like a hungry beast. What if she was truly trapped? The dark figure loomed larger, its form twisting, morphing in ways her mind couldn't comprehend. "Let me out!" Lisa screamed, voice cracking under the strain of her fear. Desperation surged, fueling her courage. She yanked the door again, pushing with all her strength. The shadows surged forward, clawing at her, pulling her backward like angry spirits on a quest to reclaim what they lost. Just as her resolve began to falter, a sudden blinding light erupted from behind her. The light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the classroom with an ethereal glow. "Mommy," the voice was soft, innocent, a beacon in the horror swirling around her. Jamie stood there, his wide eyes shimmering with tears. He reached out, a small hand glimmering in the light. "Help me!" Lisa's heart cracked open, her instincts screaming to run to her boy, but the darkness writhed, screaming in agony. "He's a lie. He's not real." The voice was frantic and filled with rage. The shadows coiled tighter around her, melting into the ground as if to form a grave. "Jamie?" she breathed, anguish clawing at her throat. The shadows trembled, the light flickering. "Mommy, please!" He stepped closer, each of his tiny footsteps echoing like a death knell. "I'm scared!" In that moment, reality twisted. The spectral figure began to scream, its voice melding with the wild whispers, a cacophony of lost souls. "You will pay for your betrayal!" It howled, and the air thickened with the weight of truth. They wouldn't truly let her go. Lisa's mind raced, 1,000 thoughts crashing together. Was her son real? Could she trust what she saw? Every instinct told her to embrace her child, yet the shadows throbbed with danger, a warning she couldn't ignore. "Stay away from him!" she yelled, summoning her final reserves of courage. "He's mine!"
The darkness howled back, a monstrous roar that rattled the very foundation of the building. "You are the darkness!" it shrieked, coiling around her legs, pulling her into its icy grasp. "Leave him alone!" Lisa cried defiantly, feeling strength surge within her. She stepped a bit closer to Jamie, feeling the warmth of his presence amidst the chill that threatened to consume her. Suddenly, the light around them brightened to blinding white, illuminating the entire hallway. She could see now. The walls weren't just imposing structures, they were stained with memories of pain and loss. The figure shrieked, recoiling from the fierce brightness, giving Lisa just enough time to gather her thoughts. "What do I need to do?" she shouted into the chaotic void, desperation twisting her voice.
The figure whispered something back, something too low for her to hear. A promise? A threat? "Mommy, please!" Jamie whimpered, his little face contorting in fear. The connection pulled at her heart like a taut string ready to snap. In that moment of clarity, she realized she had to choose, a choice that threatened to rip her apart. Should she reach for the light to save herself, or reach for her son, trusting in the bond they shared? Then came a sickening silence. The shadows drew back, the figure reeling, as if waiting on her decision. Time stretched, heavy with consequence. With a clenched jaw, Lisa stepped back, feeling the solid warmth of her child's hand wrap around hers. Beneath her breath, she whispered, "I choose you." The shadows shrieked as light exploded all around them, an intensity that blinded her. But as the fury of the darkness fought against her choice, the screams turned to laughter, low, mocking, taunting her every effort. Next came another blinding flash, but this time it felt like a trap. And then suddenly, silence. Lisa struggled to comprehend where she was as darkness swept back in, wrapping around them both. She shook, heart racing. "Jamie," she called softly, panic rising in her throat. And the room responded not with words, but with shadows, long fingers stretching toward her, each movement so fluid and sinister as if they were alive. "Where are you, Jamie?" Then she felt it, the cold grip on her wrist once more, yanking, the invisible force of the shadows seeking to claim her as darkness thrummed. She realized she hadn't escaped yet, not by a long shot. "Mommy!" The world shifted again, clarity stark among the dread. But the shadows weren't done. They weren't allowing this moment to fade. Tendrils of darkness twisted back, and all at once, Lisa knew what she had to face. But at what cost? "Are you ready to play?" it whispered, the shadows readying for another round of torment. As the darkness coiled tighter, she understood the truth. They were just getting started. The shadows twisted and churned, an endless sea of darkness eager to claim anew what it lost. Lisa felt it coiled tighter around her, squeezing her breath as terror washed over her, threatening to drown her sanity. She instinctively tugged at her wrist, desperately seeking escape, but the icy grip held firm. "Let go," she screamed, though the words felt weak against the overwhelming gloom. "Will you play?" The voice was cold, mocking her defiance, slithering through the air like smoke, wrapping around her consciousness. The malevolence in its tone sent a chill racing down her spine. "Stop it! Just stop!" Lisa shouted, feeling her power slipping. The shadows pulsed in response, as if amused by her struggle. In that darkness, memories swirled, fragments of her past, bright moments twisted into grotesque illusions, all whispering lies and threats, blurring her mind.
Then, like a dying echo, she heard Jamie's voice again, softer now, almost a whisper against the wailing shadows. "Mommy." It tore through her heart, grounding her momentarily in reality. She was losing him, losing the fragile connection they had forged amid the terror. "Jamie, where are you?" she called out, reaching blindly, straining to feel the warmth of his small hand. Her heart pounded in her chest, frantic and wild, as fear of losing him consumed her. The darkness recoiled at the sound of her voice, hissing in irritation. "You can't save him," it rasped. "He's already mine." Panic surged as shadows both pulsed and shrieked, echoing the despair that clawed in her throat. "No, no, I won't let you take him."
She felt a flicker of rage ignite within her, pushing against the suffocating fear. "You are lying! He's real! We are real!" Yet as Lisa shouted, the shadows shifted, twisting into swirling figures that mirrored her own fears. A chaotic blend of monstrous faces twisted in torment darted around her, grasping, reaching. Their hollow eyes bore into her soul. With each pulse of insane laughter, the apparitions grew stronger. "You chose the darkness," they mocked. "You cannot fight what you already are." She gasped, recognizing that the shadows weren't just trying to snatch Jamie away. They were infecting her mind, turning her against herself. A sudden thought pierced her haze of terror. If she fell to their lies, Jamie would be lost forever. "No!" she bellowed, grounding herself. "I am not yours!" The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of anger at that defiance, bucking against the walls like a tumultuous storm. The light around her flickered again, nearly extinguished by the rage. "Listen and learn," the shadows hissed, their voices melding into one, a chilling echo. "Embrace what you fear most. Your weaknesses feed us." Lisa felt it then, a tugging sensation in her heart, pulling her, their words begging her to give in, to accept the darkness that loomed just at the edges of her soul. "No!" she roared, clenching her fists until the pain became a comfort. "You'll never win!" As if in response, an explosion of dark energy surged around her, attempting to swallow her whole. But just then, another luminescent flash erupted, and in that heartbeat, she saw him, Jamie, standing illuminated in the glow just beyond the shadows. But the light was dimming. "Help me, Mommy," he cried out, his voice tugging at her heart once more. Fear seeped into her very being, but with it came determination. "Trust me, Jamie, I'm coming." The shadows recoiled, hissing, their threat clear. "You'll pay for this." Lisa charged forward. She would face whatever horrors awaited her to protect her son. Time twisted as she bolted through the dim illumination, the dark figures lunging, twisting to impede her path. Just as she nearly reached her child, the shadows exploded in a storm of howling screams. "Playtime is over."
The voice echoed, the very air thickening with dread. And as Lisa grasped Jamie's small hand, she felt the crushing weight of despair crush down upon them. In that instant, the world shifted once more. The darkness bulged and convulsed, breaking apart as if reality itself was tearing. Lisa's heart raced, pounding against her ribs like a caged animal desperate to escape. "Mommy!" Jamie's frightened squeal rang out as the shadows lunged with furious desperation. In the blink of an eye, everything around them began to dissolve, twisting into something utterly unrecognizable. And then it came, the blinding flash of white light, whispering promises of comfort, even as shadows roared in protest. "Together!" she shouted, reaching for her son. But as the light enveloped them, Lisa felt weightlessness, all clarity fading until the darkness encroached against the edges of her mind again, desperately trying to steal her into its embrace once more. What awaited them on the other side? Was this truly their escape, or merely another trap? The questions swirled like the shadows closing in, ready to unravel reality, threatening to reshape everything they believed. Could Lisa hold on to faith against the darkness that sought to claim not just her, but Jamie as well? Together, would they find the truth behind the whispers of their tormentor? Or was time finally running out? The blinding light swallowed them whole, disorienting and fierce. Lisa felt a sharp pull, as if being yanked through a tunnel, the shadows clawing at her heels. The world around her twisted, colors bleeding into one another, and for a moment it felt like they were falling into nothingness. But then, just as suddenly, the sensation stopped. Lisa gasped as she landed on cold, hard ground. She scrambled to her feet, panic flooding her senses. "Jamie!" She turned frantically, eyes wide with terror, seeking any sign of her son. The world around her felt eerily quiet, the oppressive darkness suddenly replaced by a dim, flickering light. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice came again, weak and distant, echoing through the shadows that had followed them. Lisa's heart climbed into her throat. There he was! He stood in a narrow corridor that seemed to stretch infinitely into darkness, illuminated only by scattered candles that struggled to hold back the encroaching gloom. Without hesitation, she dashed toward him. The wobbling light cast dancing shadows that mocked her every movement, stretching out grotesque forms that seemed to intertwine and sway tauntingly.
"Jamie, I'm right here," she urged, her voice trembling. But the moment she reached for him, the shadows surged forward, swirling angrily, threatening to engulf them both. "No!" she cried out, raising her hands to shield them from the malevolent tide. The shadows shrieked, howling in anguish, as they tried to reclaim what they had lost. "You think you can escape?" their voice hissed, vibrating through the air, sending chills skittering down her spine.
"You're mine, Lisa. You always have been." Their words coiled around her, seeking to wrap her in despair. She shook her head violently. "I'm not yours, not anymore." But doubt flickered in her heart, stirring memories of despair, of pain, the very moments that had left her vulnerable. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice broke through her thoughts, shaking her from the depths of suffocation. "Help me!" She glanced back. Her son was shaking, the shadows swirling closer around him. The candles flickered violently, threatening to extinguish their fragile light. Fueled by rage, Lisa plunged forward, shoving shadows aside as she raced toward him, her desperate cries echoing in the air. "Hold on, Jamie, I'm coming!" As she reached him, she yanked him close, but the darkness struck with fury, weaving around their legs like sinister vines. Lisa felt its grip pulling at her, relentless in its desire to take her back. "You cannot save him," the shadows cackled, their voices merging into one. "You are lost." Her heart raced, a torrent of primal fear washing over her, but there was a flicker of defiance. She couldn't let them take Jamie. She wouldn't. Summoning all her strength, she wrenched Jamie from the shadows and hoisted him into her arms, cradling him against her chest. "Don't look back," she shouted, taking a step back from the swirling mass, grounding herself. "You can't escape what's inside you," the voice roared, every word saturated with hatred and mockery. "The darkness is you." But something within her flared, igniting a fire she hadn't felt in ages. She felt the warmth of Jamie's small body, his heart beating against her, and it consumed her fear, driving her forward. Together they stumbled through the corridor, searching for an exit, the shadows clawing at their heels. Lisa's breath came in short gasps, the air thick with desperation and dread. The flickering light from the candles began to dim, threatening to plunge them back into the darkness. "We need to find a way out," she cried, her voice echoing hauntingly through the narrow space. Just ahead, she saw an old door, slightly ajar. Beyond it, a shimmer of bright light poured through, a stark contrast to the encroaching shadows. With everything she had, Lisa rushed forward, pushing the door wide open. But what lay beyond was something she could never have prepared for. A vast, endless expanse stretched out before them, an open field bathed in an ominous red glow, devoid of any earthly features. The shadows stood still for a moment, as if confused. But then they surged, melding together to form a singular, towering figure, a grotesque silhouette of her darkest fears. The creature roared, its voice echoing with a sickening sense of familiarity and loss. "Welcome back, Lisa." And as that familiar voice tore through the air, Lisa knew, deep down, that this was no mere illusion. This was an invitation, a game of survival unlike any they had ever played. "Run!"
She shouted, gripping Jamie's hand tightly as they sprinted into the red-lit abyss, desperate to escape whatever darkness awaited them here. But every step felt heavier as the figure loomed closer, its intent clear. Who or what was waiting for them in this hellish realm? Was it possible to truly defeat a darkness that knew their every flaw, their very essence? As they raced into the field, dread filled her heart like ice. There was no telling what terror lay ahead, and whether it would be their undoing. The only certainty was this: they were not alone. What old memories had awakened in the shadows, and would she have the strength to confront them, or might they consume her completely? The blood-red glow cast eerie shadows as Lisa and Jamie raced into the abyss, their breaths quickening with every frantic step. Lisa could feel her heart pounding in her ears, drowning the monstrous echo of the looming figure behind them. The ground beneath them felt unstable, like they were sprinting on that thin layer above a deep pit. "Don't stop! Keep running!" she yelled, looking down at Jamie. His face was pale, eyes wide with terror. Not just fear, the look was a reflection of her own, a shared terror that seemed to wrap around them like a vice. As they ran, the shadows whispered, curling around the edges of her vision. "You think you can outrun your past?
the voice hissed, dripping with malice. "You've always tried to bury it. You can't escape anymore." The shadows flickered and twisted, forming scenes that terrified Lisa. Glimpses of her life, moments steeped in failure, self-doubt, betrayals, and regrets. With each step, fear crept deeper into her veins, melding with memories she had long buried. "Mommy!" Jamie cried again, and his voice pulled Lisa from the precipice of despair. She focused on his face, the youthful innocence that still held hope. She would not let that hope be extinguished. Ahead, they spotted a distant figure silhouetted against the glowing horizon. It stood still, as if watching them, waiting. An unsettling calm hung over it, and for a fleeting moment, Lisa hesitated. "Is it help?" she whispered, her mind racing. But instinct warned her otherwise. The monster behind them roared, shaking the ground. "It's a trap!" it bellowed, its voice echoing like thunder. "You're too weak to fight, Lisa. You cannot protect him." With renewed determination, she yanked Jamie closer, bolting towards the dark figure. "Hold on to me!" she shouted, but even her own voice seemed fragile amidst the chaos. As they neared the figure, the horrific reality became clear. It was not a savior, but a twisted form of her deepest regrets. The face of an old friend, contorted and unrecognizable, eyes hollowed out. "Join us," it murmured, the voice a sickening mix of seduction and anguish. Lisa's stomach churned, recognizing the face, the friend she hadn't spoken to since their argument years ago.
Guilt flooded her, threatening to chain her down. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head wildly. "I won't let you take me." But it was impossible to ignore the weight of her past dragging on her heart. The shadows whispered sweeter now, weaving new fears into the air. "What kind of mother are you, Lisa? Can you truly protect your son from what lurks in you?" The ground shook violently, and shadows clawed at Jamie's feet. "Mommy, I can't!" he cried, panic overtaking his voice. Lisa felt helpless for a moment. What if the shadows were right? What if she couldn't escape? Panic spiked through her spine and propelled her forward. "Jamie, keep your eyes on me!" she screamed, forcing herself to block out the darkness closing in. In that instant, she remembered the fight that had torn her friendship apart, the words said in anger that still echoed painfully in her mind. With each step, determination clawed back through doubt. "We can't give up," she shouted. "We are stronger than this." The imposing figure loomed closer, faces merging into a cacophony of her failures. Each second felt like an eternity as they hurtled toward it. The air grew thick, suffocating her resolve. But then, out of the haze of despair, a new clarity struck her. A memory of joy, her son laughing, the warmth of love, the unyielding support she had found in those few friends who truly mattered. "Jamie," she called, her voice steady. "We have each other. That's enough." They surged toward the dark figure, and at that moment, it faltered. The echoes of Lisa's past twisted around it, fizzling out in a cacophony of sound. Then, just as victory seemed tangible, the ground beneath them trembled violently, snapping back as though it wanted to swallow them whole. A deafening roar reverberated through the air, and the figure lunged forward. "Run!" Lisa screamed, gripping Jamie's hand tighter as they turned and sprinted into the depths of the unknown. But with each step, Lisa felt a pull, as if the ground was trying to reclaim them. In that moment of desperate escape, as they raced into a dense fog that rolled in, she felt a sharp pain slice through her leg. She stumbled, falling to the ground as Jamie's terrified scream shattered the silence. "Mommy, help!" The shadows surged, closing in, wrapping around her like a noose. Lisa struggled to rise, heart racing. She caught a glimpse of Jamie, retreating into the fog, his figure becoming indistinct as the darkness curled around him. "Jamie!" she cried, desperation flooding her voice. But she was pinned to the ground, the weight of the shadows anchoring her in place. "Are you ready to give in?" The deep voice of the creature floated through the air. With everything inside her, Lisa thrashed against the shadows, fighting their icy grip. "I will not lose him," she shouted, strength pouring into her words like molten lead, igniting hope in her soul.
But even as she struggled, the shadows whispered, offering her a haunting choice between surrender and survival, a decision that would determine their fates. Could she find a way to break free from the darkness before it was too late? What would it cost her to save her son? The fog thickened, swallowing them both as uncertainty began to weave its dark threads once more. Lisa's heart thundered in her chest, the fear and pain mingling with an overwhelming sense of urgency. As the shadows clutched at her, Their cold touch sent chills up her spine, squeezing her limbs with a suffocating grip. "Jamie!" The name escaped her lips like a prayer, but the fog between them thickened, strangling her voice. The shadow swirled, hiding him from her sight, and panic simmered just below the surface, threatening to boil over. "Is this what you want?" The creature's voice taunted, sounding almost playful. "To struggle, to fight against what you truly are? You can't protect him from this truth." Lisa writhed, gritting her teeth against the rising tide of despair. Memories crashed against her like waves, tender moments with Jamie, laughter echoing in sunlit rooms, bedtime stories wrapped in warmth. Yet in each cherished memory lurked that insidious shadow, whispering that her inadequacies had doomed them both. Suddenly, a vision crashed into her mind, Jamie alone in a dark room, the shadow stretching toward him like skeletal fingers. A cold sweat broke out on her skin. "Jamie!" she screamed again, her voice cracking. With renewed vigor, she fought against the shadows pinning her down. "I won't let this happen!" she cried, spitting her defiance into the depths. The figure, that twisted amalgamation of her fears and failures, laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated off the foggy walls of their prison. But deep inside, a flicker of hope remained, quietly taking form. She remembered the warmth of Jamie's tiny hand in hers during winter nights, the way he clung to her whenever lightning cracked through the sky, seeking refuge in her embrace. "Jamie needs me!" she shouted, the determination surging like a volcano erupting. In a violent burst of strength, she twisted her body, breaking one arm free from the claws of darkness. "Let go!" she howled, every ounce of her will pouring into those words. The shadows recoiled, hissing like cornered snakes, their voices mingling in a cacophony of agony. Then she pushed herself up, sensing the ground beneath her had shifted. The fog glowed with a ghostly light. Straining her eyes, she squinted into the murk, searching for any sign of her son. "Jamie! Where are you?" In that moment of frantic hope, she could make out a pinprick of light in the distance, fluttering like a candle in the wind. Heart racing, she surged toward it, grappling with the remnants of fear holding her back. "Hang on, I'm coming," she promised, determination igniting every weary muscle in her body.
Yet with each desperate step, the shadows lurked, reaching out to ensnare her. Suddenly, a piercing shriek cut through the air. It was Jamie. "Mommy, please!" Lisa's blood ran cold, terror clawing at her heart. "I'm here!" she screamed back, stumbling as the shadows twisted around her legs. She could feel their cold breath, whispering their threats of failure, taunting her with images of the monstrous creature that loomed in the dark behind her. "Run to the light, Jamie!" She could barely hear her own voice over the blood pounding in her ears, but she held on to the flicker of hope deep in her chest, pushing through the darkness with sheer will. With every step she took toward that light, it grew brighter, yet looming around it was that familiar figure, the face of her friend, distorted with hurt and anger. "You'll lose him, Lisa. Just give up." "No," she grunted, forcing the words from her mouth. "I will not surrender." The shadows writhed more violently, as if enraged by her declaration. Then the ground shook beneath her, violent tremors threatening to pull her into the void. Lisa let out a guttural scream, swinging her arms in wild arcs to fight off the darkness. She was close to the light, but it flickered ominously now, a taunting glimmer just out of reach. Then the shades around her surged forward, desperate to ensnare her once more. What will it be, your past or your son? In that spine-chilling moment, the choice lay before her, and dread clutched at her heart again. Could she defy the shadows and save Jamie? Would she let go of the past to grasp on to the future? With a surge of energy, she lunged forward, the figure of her old friend momentarily blurring as her resolve solidified. "I choose him," Lisa screamed, releasing everything she held on to for the sake of their bond. As she plunged into the light, a deafening silence engulfed her. The oppressive weight of the shadow shattered against the brightness, and in that moment she thought of nothing but Jamie, existing within that light, safe and sound. Then a chilling whisper swept through the air, clawing at her spirit. "Will it ever be that easy? You will never escape what you've done."
Every fiber of her being turned, trying to hold on to the warmth, even as shadows draped over her like thick smoke. The cold creeped in again, the familiar dread sinking deep into her soul. But in the midst of darkness, there remained a flicker of hope. Could she escape the final grasp of her past before it shattered everything? Lisa's heart raced with uncertainty, ready to face whatever came next. The void was unbearable. The shadows brushed against her like icy fingers, reminding her of their relentless grasp. She felt her heartbeat reverberate in her ears as darkness crowded around, each whisper bringing an echo of pain from yesterday's long gone. But she wouldn't allow it.
Gathering every shred of courage, she concentrated on Jamie, the warmth of his laughter, the way he curled against her at night, the love that tied them. "I choose you," she declared, a battle cry against the suffocating gloom. The brightness surged around her, a lighthouse in the storm of her own fears. The figure of her friend twisted and shrieked, an echo of guilt and betrayal that clouded her resolve. "You won't leave here," it roared, but the shadows began to unravel at the edges of her newfound strength. With every beat of uncertainty, the light intensified, the very air shimmering as if drenched in sunlight. That warmth soaked through her skin and into her bones, bolstering her will. "I won't let you take him," she shouted, as though the declaration would cut through the very fabric of despair that sought to imprison her and Jamie together in this twisted nightmare. Each step she took toward the light felt like overcoming an entire world of doubt. Shadows writhed, shrieking in fury as they lunged at her, threatening to envelop her completely. "You belong to us," they howled, but their words faltered against the power of her love. "Mommy!" Jamie cried again, the desperation in his voice igniting the full force of a mother's instinct. "Please! Hold on!" she yelled back, pushing ahead, knowing that giving in now would mean losing everything. Each ounce of fear was a stake through her heart, but the thought of Jamie's gentle smile fueled her strength. As she reached the edge of the bright light, the tender glow that promised both safety and new beginnings, a final blast of darkness surged toward her. She felt the ice grasp of the shadows attempting to pull her back, swirling and hissing. "You'll fail! You can't escape!" With one final desperate push, Lisa launched herself into the light, arms stretched wide in a protective gesture, hoping to engulf them both in the warmth. The moment she crossed over, the world around them exploded in brilliant colors. The shadows dissipated like smoke in the wind, the cacophony of despair silenced. She stood in a sun-soaked field, golden light spilling over them, embracing them in warmth. "Jamie!" Lisa gasped, collapsing to her knees as she found him standing before her, face aglow, a small smile breaking through the remnants of fear. Her heart soared despite the winding threads of darkness still clinging to her mind. "You found me, Mommy!" he beamed, innocent joy shining through his soft features. Tears streamed down Lisa's face as Jamie raced towards her, throwing himself into her arms. She clutched him tight, a flood of emotions bursting forth. Relief flooded over her, wrapping her around her like a heavy blanket, and a soft laugh escaped her lips. "I'm so sorry, my love. I'm so sorry," she murmured, burying her face in his hair, inhaling the sweet scent of his childhood. But as the moment of relief washed over them, a whisper threaded through the bright air, chilling her spine. "You can't run from what you are." Lisa's chest tightened, but the warmth in her arms reminded her of the reality she fought for. They were free, not tied to the shadows anymore. "No, no more," she declared, raising her head defiantly. "You don't get to shape who I am or what I've done." With those words, the echoes of the shadows popped like soap bubbles, one by one dissolving into the bright air. The light grew stronger, purging the remnants of darkness that thrived upon her fear. "Together, always," she whispered, gaze locked upon Jamie's bright eyes. In that moment, a bond forged not just in love, but in resilience, stood between them and the shadows of despair. They might have raced through darkness, but they emerged together, helpless, yet so much stronger. The field breathed around them, alive with possibilities. A world beyond shadows awaited, laughter, sunshine, and the essence of love. Together, they took a collective breath, a shared promise that they would face it, all of it, together. As they took their first step forward, hand in hand, the echoes of the darkness faded into whispers on the wind, never to return. Together, they truly could conquer anything. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference.
Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Lisa and Jamie's escape. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.